Makes me laugh. Anyway, that's happening, and I'll show that to you as well. Liberals have never met a tax they didn't like, and Chrystia Freeland's proposing a new one because she's got to compete with Mark Carney, I guess. They want a prorogue, says the rumor mill. I've got a bunch of rumor people talking about it, but I don't have any hard tweets about it. But be on the lookout. Everybody's saying they're going to prorogue today. So that's what's happening. That's the rumor mill. That's on the horizon probably. And I don't see any reason for Trudeau to keep Parliament open because he's just going to get browbeat every day. And so he's got an incentive. I'm not saying that I support the prorogue. I'm just saying that he's got an incentive to prorogue because Poilievre's like a dog with a bone, and he's got a bit of the marrow taste now. And so $400 million green slush fund is where we're going to start, and the documents are holding up House business. So Justin Trudeau can't do anything but get browbeat by Pierre Poilievre about this missing money. And every day that passes is a day that the polls look weaker for Justin Trudeau and stronger for Yves Francois Blanchet. And so that's weird. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, green slush fund, extra money missing, and Pierre Poilievre going after Justin Trudeau. Concerned Canadian says both the amount and the number of violations is unprecedented. Hold firm, Pierre Poilievre, you're the only one that can and will make this government accountable. Maybe. I mean, I'd love to see that happen. That would be super fun, right? That would be great. I'm worried that it won't. I'm worried that we won't see any parliamentarians held accountable because we don't have a good track record of that, but I'd love to see it. Here's Pierre Poilievre talking about the green slush fund and the money missing. And I'd love to say, where's the money, Catherine McKenna? Are we going to go back in a little bit of time and look at that missing chunk of change too? Here's Poilievre.
It's been months now since the Auditor General revealed a $400 million spending scandal involving 186 incidences of conflict of interest where Liberal appointees gave tax dollars to their own companies. $400 million is a lot of money for the single moms who can't afford groceries, for the seniors who can't afford rent. We're not just going to let $400 million of corruption be swept under the rug so Justin Trudeau can get on with his day. So we say, let's end this now. Let's get Parliament back to work by handing over the documents to the police so we can bring home accountability.
So there you go. They want the documents handed over. And the main argument from the Liberals is this is unconstitutional. You wouldn't hand your private documentation over to the police so they can scour it to look for a crime. And like if they have a crime, they should bring it. And, you know, I don't think that he says we'll comply with the order. But the fact is, though, it doesn't matter what Parliament's going to do with those documents. Parliament compelled those documents, right? And yeah, they want to give them to the police. But that's a weird thing to fixate on and say they're violating the Constitution and therefore we're not going to give the documents. Fundamentally, the Liberals are refusing to hand over this documentation, just like they did with the Winnipeg lab. And they were able to survive that scandal. Do you think they'll be able to survive this scandal? Different leader. So that's notable. Here's a little bit of Champagne talking about this, and he gets very animated. His facial expressions make me kind of laugh. The point he's trying to make, I think, is clear in the first minute or minute and a half. So we'll listen to that. Here we go.
Well, because the RCMP commissioner has spoken. The RCMP commissioner and the Auditor General have been very, very clear to say, do not proceed this way. There are procedures existing. There are ways to do that would preserve the rights and the rights of the people which you're talking about. Imagine what he's suggesting is that you would turn over personal files of people, of employees and former employees of a third-party entity. This is pretty wide. You're saying that now Parliament would say to an arm's length entity, a foundation created by Parliament in 2001, not respecting any of the rules about procedural fairness, not respecting what the Auditor General is saying. There is a fundamental problem. That's why we're standing up for democracy. We're standing up for justice. We're standing up for common sense, I would say. It's dangerous to use the word dangerous.
So I'll leave it there. It's 3.5 minutes. That's just a minute there. And I think it's funny that instead of talking about the money, he could end this now by explaining where the money went and explaining where the money went, because that was fundamentally the question, and it seems corrupt, and the corruption is the problem, right? The procedure and the fairness, it seems like somebody trying to cut through the red tape and get things done, no matter who they are, whether it's Bernier or Polyev in this instance, with the Conservatives asking for this document. They seem to be trying to cut through the red tape. And as soon as that happens, the Liberals lose control. They can't adjourn the committee. They can't, if you go through the proper channels, the Liberals hold all the cards and they can just end it, right? Like, oh, sorry, shucks, next time maybe you'll have a chance to get the documents that you wanted, but not this time. And so they are upset that they've been outfoxed, and they have to produce the documents, or they have to do what they did during the the Winnipeg Labs situation, and I guess have somebody show up at the bar of the House, refuse to give over the documents. They hit him with a glove or something like that, and then we move on. That's what happened last time, right? So, I mean, nothing happened last time, and we're still dealing with the impact. And like, since the Winnipeg Biolab, Chinese and the Winnipeg Biolab, we had a big pandemic, right? Like, isn't that weird? And still no accountability. And most people snoring away, like most people really not interested in connecting any of those dots whatsoever. I digress. Back to the $400 million green slush fund, which is the soup of the day. Rick says, and he's an MP, he says, breaking, Liberals are filibustering a Conservative privilege motion. The architects of the Green Slush Fund, Navdeep Bains, has refused to answer questions related to the appointments he made as minister. Opposition parties want answers. Stay tuned. So we'll see. I mean, at this point in time, Polyev has succeeded in grinding the House to a halt. Although I heard that one of the bills, the pharmacare, the one that mimics the WHO's healthcare plan, that basically gives Health Canada dictatorial powers in Canada. I heard that one passed on the, sneakily, and that's why they're going to be able to prorogue today. But again, I don't have any evidence of that. I don't have anything other than people talking about it, and that's not quite enough. Like, it's not parliamentarians talking about it. It's news people and other people. It's kind of tangential. It's speculative. It's not there yet, but I possibly, right? It's right on the cusp. So it's something to watch for sure. And so if they prorogue, I think that it's a good sign for Mr. Polyev. I mean, not necessarily a good sign for maneuverability. Can't do anything, but I don't know if it's true that bill got royal assent yesterday. Anyway, regardless, I digress. Back to this. Leslyn Lewis says the Liberal government is obstructing justice by refusing to turn over documents to the RCMP, showing that Liberal appointed managers used the Green Slush Fund to pay nearly $400 million to companies that they owned. Canadians deserve transparency and a full investigation into this latest costly Liberal scandal. So that's the other part of this, right? Like, it's not just the money was funneled to these companies and the oversight is not good, and they broke a lot of procurement rules that have been in place to stop a lot of this kind of funneling of taxpayer dollars directly to people who are supposed to be working for taxpayers. And so it is that they themselves own the companies they were funneling the money to. And so that's like an extra layer of insult, right? That's an extra layer of, I don't know what. Canadians deserve transparency and a full investigation into this latest costly Liberal scandal. Yeah, probably. Like, if you do that, if you use your position, if you work for Pepsi, or if you work for like a really big multinational company or something like that, and you use your position to create another company that subcontracts to your company, Pepsi or whatever it is, and they don't know about that or anything like that, and you're making yourself really rich by charging them a crap load of money, and then while working at Pepsi or whatever, you are making decisions to funnel money to that company, like, that's probably illegal, right? You get in trouble for that. I think that's fraudulent. You don't mention anything. You're like A&G Industries, blah, blah, blah. And then it's your company, A&G Industries, and then you've got all this money from Pepsi, and I don't know. I feel like that's fraudulent. I feel like there are problems there. And especially as in Randy Balsano's case, he was a minister. He had a powerful position and he had insider information, and he used that to advantage his companies directly. It seems that's been alleged. And so in situations like that, I think there are rules in place and the Liberals just don't care. So like, how deep does this go? So I'm firmly on the side of the documents that the House has voted to be procured and released unredacted need to be procured, released, unredacted. And if they're in the public, then the police would have access to them. Delivering them to the police directly, I don't know that violates anything. I think as soon as they're public, the police would have access and then have an obligation to investigate. And if not, the public who reads it, or an MP who reads it, would be able to say, hey, like, here's a whole crap load of criminality, eh? And then the police would be able to investigate. No? That's my feeling on the whole thing. Here's Leslyn Lewis talking about this. 40 seconds, not too long.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and now time is up. Mr. Speaker, you ruled that the government has violated the House order to turn over evidence to the RCMP related to the $400 million green slush fund scandal. Yet, the Liberal government continues to obstruct justice by refusing to turn over these documents. When will they end this cover-up and let the House focus on solving the housing, food, and inflation crisis that they created?
Well, they're not going to do any of that. That's not going to happen because they are desperately trying to hold on to power. Michael Chong says Parliament has the lawful and constitutional authority to order the production of documents. The government is defying the order for the $400 million fund documents, just like the Winnipeg lab documents. Once again, it's trampling all over the constitutional authority of the House. And so there's 2 minutes of Michael Chong talking about this. I'm not going to play it right now, but yeah, that's fundamentally what's going on. And will we get any relief? I don't think so. It looks like they're going to prorogue rather than, it looks like they're going to end whatever's happening now, and maybe even till the new year, right? I've heard until January, and then they can come back and just go right into an election. Sorry, Jagmeet. But at this point in time, I don't know how this is going to go. If the House can be, if there could be a confidence vote today or tomorrow, well, it can't be tomorrow if they prorogue today. So, right? Like, nothing can happen. So they stay in power and all of their policies continue and all of the rest of it. And so that's not so good. Here's gov.exe. He says, after trampling the rights and freedoms with the EMA and holding Canadians politically hostage to maintain power, Liberals now claim they stand up for the Charter while defending democracy. How can they claim to be defenders of democracy while protecting traitors? So they're saying, again, I played what Champagne was saying, and that's essentially what Verini's saying. They're both saying, like, we're protecting Canadians' right to privacy by opposing this document grab for inappropriate use and giving it over to the police. And I say again, Canadians have a right to know where their tax dollars went, and if the tax dollars went to bureaucrats who work for the government, who created a company on the side to irregularly funnel money to that company, those people should be held criminally responsible. Period. Yeah, and if the documents prove that, great. Then we should do that, and we should prosecute them to the furthest extent of the law. But I think they do prove that, and that's why these Liberals are coming up with this nonsense garbage to justify keeping it all quiet, because they know if we knew what they did, we wouldn't tolerate it. Here's Garnet Genius, and he says the Liberals are filibustering the Public Accounts Committee to protect a former Liberal minister from questions about the Green Slush Fund. Liberals are desperate to hide information on the Green Slush Fund scandal. They've paralyzed Parliament now, and now they're paralyzing committees, all to prevent us from getting to the bottom of this big scandal. So I said prorogue by another name recently, paralyzing the committees, paralyzing the House, refusing to hand over the documents, and doing all this damage is prorogue by another name, right? I mean, I say damage, but like, they're doing damage by not allowing people to get to the truth, transparent truth. We pay for all of this. It's our tax dollars. We have a right to know kind of what they've done with it, right? And so they can't do more damage by passing censorship laws, but they're trying to pass censorship laws, and it's inappropriate. And I mean, I hope that they're stopped in their tracks, but we'll see. We've got to talk about free speech before we talk about Jasper and then Milton. It's a packed show today. There's lots to get to. Holy cow. Jim McMurtry is great. Like, he's a fired teacher, and he does not like compelled speech, and I don't like compelled speech. And he's fighting the good fight with regards to the residential school reimagining of history, and he's fighting the good fight with regards to standing up for Canadian heritage and the ability to be free in your expression and thought, and be able to express that, and et cetera, et cetera. And so he's been around. and he's been building a kind of a more public profile recently in the last few years since he was fired from schools. And here's what he has to say about land acknowledgements. And I think I very much agree with him. Here we go.
I am Jim McMurtry. I'm that Abbotsford teacher that was fired for insisting on the truth. But I don't believe that one Canadian has more or fewer rights than others. I really have a difficult time with land acknowledgements. I see them as compelled speech.
Before we begin today, I would just like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we meet is on the unceded traditional territories of
that my stand against land acknowledgements, my walking out tonight during the land acknowledgements, is to encourage others to do the same. There has to be a time in Canada where we start acting based on our conscience. The first thing is that I, being a teacher in residence, raised a family here in Cloverdale, said I don't do land acknowledgements, and I think you saw that. When it was begun, I walked out. It's compelled speech. That is not a Canadian value. I'm a teacher. What I want to do is model for my students what conscience tells us to do. That nobody else should be able to say that this isn't my land, this isn't my house, that it belongs to somebody else. And the kids shouldn't have to either. And I think it's important that we say, this is enough. This is the end of the road. Land acknowledgements have to go.
Yeah, sounds good to me. It's a waste of time. Anytime I'm in a situation where there are land acknowledgements, it's funny because people can tell that I'm like intolerant of it, but I don't behave in the way that you're expected to behave. And it's funny that people will lean over to me and say, most people aren't paying attention either. It's like, that's not the point. If there are a majority of us who don't give a rat's ass about this stupid tradition that's being forced down our throats, we should end it. We should stop it. And like, if you're agnostic, if you're just kind of sitting there letting somebody mouth these words, then you're complicit, right? Like, it's one of those things that is frustrating and difficult to fight back against. I'm not saying you should stand up and disrupt the land acknowledgement. I just don't participate. I put earphones in, I check my phone, I do everything but do the land acknowledgement thing. And I'm not going to disrupt other people, but I'm not going to do this whole thing. I'm not participating in this thing. And walking out probably be another good idea to do, right? But I protest in my own way, I suppose. But other people do the same thing. Fine, good. How do we move that to the next level? Because the next step of that, the obvious next step, in my opinion, I think they're going to try and remove Thanksgiving in favor of Truth and Reconciliation Day. Thanksgiving's coming up, and the two are in conflict with each other. The two are diametric opposites. Okay, one is a very divisive positioning of the relationship between Europeans and First Nations people, right? And it's a very divisive view. The whole thing is viewed through a fictional genocide that never happened, and that's the only thing we're allowed to talk about. And if you say it didn't happen, then you're evil. And instead of like talking about that and saying this thing that you're basing this whole thing on is false, and so we shouldn't do any of this, people say, oh yeah, well, there's terrible things that happen. And it's like, that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is this very specific thing. They're not saying there's lots of terrible things that happen. They're saying this very specific genocide thing happened with all these bodies and murder. And it didn't happen. And you're not allowed to question it. And that's crazy. But what they're going to try and do is remove the Thanksgiving, which is a unifying holiday. It's a story of Europeans who needed help and First Nations people who gave it, and sharing around an abundant table and breaking bread together and becoming unified and eventually building a country together, right? Together, not one building a country on the other's back, but together. And like, it's not perfect because nothing's perfect, right? History is not perfect. And what you view as morally correct today, in 100 years, people may look back and say, you mutilated children? What? Right? And so like, that's weird, right? It's weird for us to judge history by our metric, by our measuring stick, and then to entirely change our society around for it. But that's what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and get rid of Thanksgiving. And then when when people try and get rid of it, standing up and saying, this is wrong, we shouldn't do that, is going to be the same as standing up and saying, we shouldn't do land acknowledgements, right? And it's going to be seen the same way. And people are going to be bamboozled into, how do we fight this, right? And they're going to be limited by what they can do because of familial expectations, because it's not just like your wife might get mad at you, right? It's that your wife may get fired, right? If your wife's a teacher, or if your wife's working in some industry that pays attention to this kind of stuff, and you become an outspoken blah, 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 whatever. The guy who ran for PPC after me, his wife got fired, and that's public. Like, you can check that out. And it's not just one incident. There are tons of them. I could go on. People have messaged me saying, I was open about this in my work and I got demoted, or I was, written up, called into the manager's office and told not to talk about it anymore. All sorts of stories all the time. Okay. And so it's not just you, it's the people around you. And so they will try and get compliance by making fighting back hard. And I mean, I'm not perfect, right? Like, I look at the guy at Jim McMurtry and the kid. Who is that kid? What's his name? He's like famous. Josh. He's got a brother. They're twins. They wear MAGA hats. They go to the school, and they got arrested at the school. He was interviewed by Jordan Peterson. There's 3 of them. Him and Randy Hillier hung out for a while. Like, they were doing events together. And anyway, young kid. I look at people like that, and Jim McMurtry walking out of the land acknowledgements, and I'm inspired by them because I feel like I don't do enough, right? I feel like I'm not direct actioning enough, but that's not my gig. That's not what I do. Greg does that. I don't do that. I'm in my garage. Sorry. That's what I have time for. That's what I do. But it is an interesting thing where I look at my pushback and I don't feel like it's enough. But at the same time, it's still pretty risky. And then I look at people like Jim McMurtry and other people, Randy Hillier too, and there are other people, Maxime Bernier as well, who are putting it all on the line and saying, like, this is wrong and this is the way to do it right. And I feel like sometimes people who are doing that in one way are very inspirational and leaders and showing the way to how we solve this problem. And in another way, I feel like they're standing on tracks and there's a train that's about 1 kilometer out and it's going like, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, fast, 100 kilometers an hour. And you're standing on the track going, come on, everybody, we can stop this train together. And it's like, oh man, like that thing's going to really, really run over you, like for real run over you. And I can't get on there to be run over with you because oof, right? And so like, it's a catch-22 because because they're right, enough of us can stop that train, but I'm also right. And I don't see enough of us around here to stop that train, right? I'm looking around and I just don't see it. So, and maybe you can only see them from the tracks. I don't know. I have no idea, but it's terrifying. And like, it is a situation where like they're not hiding. Here's Kamala Harris and James Lindsay says, I don't need to tell you how communist this is. Here's Kamala Harris. This is what they're going to do. Like, she's not kidding. Okay. She's not kidding. They're coming for you. If you're not on that track, once that train goes through and runs over Donald Trump, Maxime Bernier, the people who are standing on the track, Elon Musk, maybe he might be driving the train. I don't know. The people standing on the track, they're coming for you and me, right? Me first, probably. Here's Kamala Harris talking about how they want to crack down on those evil people and their misinformation. Here we go.
And we'll put the Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community. And we'll put the department...
Right? So, Yaza, right? If you don't censor at our behest, we are going to put you on notice. We are going to get the Department of Justice to crack down on you. Hey, who's that? Disclose TV? They unblocked me. Crazy. I emailed them yesterday. I was like, I don't know why I'm blocked. Could you tell me why I'm blocked? And I said, I usually use you. I'm an aggregator of sorts. I do a little news show. And I gave them my website. And I was like, I don't know why you blocked me. What did I do? If you can tell me what I did, I'll think about undoing it. I don't know. And then they messaged me this morning and it said, your ticket has been updated, but they didn't say anything else. And I was like, okay. And I was scrolling through and this popped up and I was like, oh, okay. My ticket has been updated. Like they unblocked me. So I don't know what happened. So the blip is over. Censorship over. Yay. Anyway, ZXY says the Internet Archive got hacked. That's crazy, bro. The thing that has the old news articles and old social posts and videos that contradict the blatant lies of the state-controlled media. That's nuts, my guy. Right before the election? Bonkers, dude. And so Disclosed TV reports Internet Archive hacked. A pop-up claims there was a catastrophic security breach, and now the site is down with a temporarily offline notice. 2 days in a row. 2 days in a row, the Internet the Wayback Machine Internet Archive has been attacked and been taken down. And so that's something to pay attention to. Very, very interesting. Brian says, as I said, for over 3 decades, and few cared to understand. He was standing on the railroad track screaming about this. We are moving from the information age to the amnesia age. The Internet Archive has been attacked and the aim is to delete it. Do you hear me now? Any large ethical AI company that does not come to its aid is worthless. Don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. Maxime Bernier says in Trudeau's post-national Canada, patriots who protest for our fundamental rights are crushed by riot police and persecuted, and their bank accounts are frozen. Meanwhile, terrorist sympathizers who shout death to Canada are left alone. And we import more of them every day. So here's the Liberal Party as this is the Drake meme. Have you seen this Drake meme? So like one thing he's like, no. This is Hotline Bling, isn't it? It was a terrible song. The music has gotten dreadful. Give me a barbershop quartet any day. Seth MacFarlane actually has a very good voice. He was trained by the same people who trained Frank Sinatra. And if you want like a classic sounding modern Christmas album, check Seth MacFarlane out. I don't know why I know why I was thinking about Christmas, but anyway, regardless, Hotline Bling, Drake. And so on one side, Hotline Bling liberals don't like the Freedom Convoy, right? They're like, no. And then on the yes side is the Death to Canada, burning the Canadian flag. The liberals love that. Accurate. I love the memes. They're fantastic. So Eva Chippick is saying in Canada. So the other day, I showed you a Zoom link to visit, and I think it was even BC. And there were so many people who were trying to access the link that the Zoom link went down, and I don't think many people really did get to see the court proceedings, and people are upset about that because you can hide a lot in a court proceeding that is not public, right? And so John Rustad wants public court proceedings to be recorded and then put online for anybody to watch whenever they want, because now that's not happening, right? And so Rustad says, or Jared says, Rustad vows to ensure all court proceedings are recorded and made available online for British Columbia. Great, that's good. Eva says, in Canada, transparency and the principle of open justice are fundamental aspects of the judicial system. These principles emphasize the importance of not only delivering justice, but also ensuring that it is visible and understood by the public. By maintaining transparency, the legal system can cultivate trust among citizens, promote accountability, and uphold the integrity of legal proceedings. Open courts play a crucial role in allowing individuals to witness how justice is administered in a fair, impartial, and efficient manner. This transparency is essential for building public confidence in the judiciary and the legal system as a whole. Court proceedings are more easily accessible in the United States compared to Canada. With the advancements in technology, there's no excuse for Canada to lag behind. I encourage other provincial leaders and officials across Canada to follow suit and call for increased transparency in legal proceedings. Yeah, it would be an easy way to add a check and balance into that whole thing. And like, public is interested, and it's very interesting. Like, I like things, I like certain things, and I don't like certain things. And so I tend to ignore the things I don't like in favor of the things I do like. But when you get a large population and you get somebody like me who's detail oriented about some things, and then I miss details on other things, and then another person who sees details that I miss, and then all of a sudden the other person points something out that fills in a blank that I didn't see, and all of a sudden the whole bigger picture becomes apparent. And it's just crowdsourcing. It's just the crowd is smarter than the individual, right? Like, here's a funny trick. Have you ever seen those count the number of jelly beans? I was going to say bean bags. I was like, they don't put bean bags in jars. Jelly beans in jars. If you average up all of the guesses, usually it's very accurate, right? If you average out the guesses, you get a number that is like pretty close to the number accurate, right? And so like the crowd is more intelligent than the individual. The individual can make an educated guess, but collectively that educated guess averaged out usually very close, which is weird, right? Like that's a weird thing. And so the crowd is more intelligent. And so if there's impropriety, it's the same thing with my bounty idea, right? Like make everything public and then give the public an incentive to find impropriety. That makes the politicians honest, or as honest as you can imagine, right? If everything they email anybody ever gets published, yeah, that'll keep you honest. Like, so I don't know. I think that's a good idea. Anyway, Sheila Gunn Reid, let's talk about Jasper and the wildfire, because we've been talking about this. Ken Hodges, a forestry expert who warned Parks Canada 7 years ago about the potential for a catastrophic wildfire in Jasper, testifies that not enough was done and that Parks Canada seemed to be a bunch of know-it-alls ill-equipped to deal with the disaster which lay ahead. It's a 6-minute video, so I don't have, I'm not going to play this right now, but it's links in the description. It's interesting. Certainly worth a watch. Paul Mitchell is responding to Justin Trudeau, or Canadian PM. He says, putting Randy Balsano in charge is disgusting. Is everything the Trudeau regime does designed to enrage us? And the Canadian Prime Minister says, today, Prime Minister Trudeau appointed Minister Balsano as ministerial lead to Jasper to coordinate federal support with provincial, municipal, and Indigenous partners, ensuring a collective effort to help the historic town recover. So these people caused this fire through their inaction, and they're directly stopping fire people from helping out. And now they're saying, oh yeah, well, we're going to help them rebuild and stuff. And it's very gauche. I don't like it at all. It's very yucky. Holly Doan says Liberal aide Zita Estreveras denies that she tried to obstruct the investigation of Liberal Party contacts. Oh, this is in the wrong spot. Sorry. I'll move this. Sorry, not sorry. Says, what do you do when a cabinet minister is under investigation and has admitted to breaching laws? Give him another file to manage. Either the Liberals don't care what taxpayers think, or there isn't one single other member worthy, or both. Randy Balsano promoted to minister in charge of Jasper wildfire recovery. Jasper rebuilds after federal mismanagement, and Trudeau's new man at the helm faces corruption and ethics allegations. So yeah, the other Randy, there's a whole bunch of, he's implicated in the same kind of green slush fund scam, but for PPE and there's a whole bunch of in his company, and there's a whole bunch of evidence that says he was the guy, and they've zeroed in on it. And now, like, it was a big deal 2 weeks ago, and now he gets a new file. Here you go. Here's the Jasper file. Okay. Adam Van Kay, and he's not going to win his seat back again. He's trying to inject some mistruths out there by saying the Conservatives are engaging in misinformation. He says, lately at Environment Canada Committee, Conservative MP Blaine Calkins and Dan Mazur have displayed a truly disgusting political weaponization of the Jasper wildfire in an effort to politically profit off the hardship that Jasper has seen this summer. Names redacted, and he goes into a thread. And he says their misinformation goes beyond the casual lies they spout on a regular basis. Oh, interesting. Casual liars? Isn't that defamation? Isn't that defaming somebody? Last week, it became public that the emergency response personnel whose acts of heroism have been credited with saving the majority of the town have received death threats as a result of the Conservative MPs sharing their contact information in asserting... Yeah, are these the same people that got told they couldn't fight fires in one place and then they went and saved the main town because there wasn't anything else they could do? It's weird, right? Anyway, the whole idea is to inject doubt about what's being reported about the Jasper wildfire. And he's not telling the truth. Like, Adam Van Kay's not telling the truth. He's cherry picking and blaming the Conservatives and making this very, very political. And they should just release the documents. They should release the emails. They should release all of the Parks Canada communications. Like, there's a whole bunch of evidence that they knew. They'd been told by people who were very concerned about the state of the forest. They were concerned about the state of forestry management that wasn't being done. And they continued, the Liberals, Adam Van Kay, continued to ignore it and allowed this fire to happen. And now that it's happened, they're saying the Conservatives are dealing in misinformation. And it's not good. It's bad because they're liars, but they're accusing everybody else of being liars while lying with complete impunity. It's incredible. It's incredible. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful